next cycle of the Amtgard Leadership University that we're holding here at Clan. This one's all about how to maintain and re-energize your land. One of the things that we've talked about as the day's gone on is really how to start a land and start gaining momentum. But what do you do when that starts to flag a little bit and all of a sudden you're having some issues trying to find that spark? Sometimes everybody can get on board to start a group, but maintaining a group is often just as, if not probably more difficult, to trying to keep that excitement alive. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So we've got a great panel up here that's going to share some of their experiences, some of their recommendations, some of their hopefully not too severe lessons learned from maybe some they've had some not so successful efforts. But they're going to share that stuff with us as we go forward. And what we'll do is each one of them will tell us a little bit about themselves and maybe start some topic, filling out the information on the topic and dive into that for a few moments. And then we'll start really digging into some of the questions stuff. So without further ado, we'll start with Randall.
My name is Randall Andalsa. I've been playing Amtgard since 1992. And I'll be focusing a lot of my answers based on my perspective of having been part of running my home park, which is the Crown Lands of Dragon's Spine, since 2000, and what I've heard other people talk about, the challenges that come from running their parks around Amtgard.
My name is Anatole Stroke, and I'll be answering my questions based on being king of Dragon's Spine. Crown Lands have been moving to a very small park and having to be a sheriff and kind of build a park in a place where the weather isn't too hospitable for that all the time.
My name is Kaads. I'll be talking about my experiences as being a monarch of the rising winds and also having to mediate a lot of situations at smaller parks where there's lots of pulls of personalities, lots of things like that. So.
All right, let's get at it. So we'll start actually, since Anatole's drinking water, we'll start with them. Right, awkward moment. All right. So tell us a little bit about that experience. You were the king of Dragon's Spine, one of the few remaining static crowns. How do you keep that excitement going at a park like that?
So a lot of that is when you have a park that has a culture of really good Amtgard, so people are excited to come out. It's not too hard. The main thing you got to do is ask yourself what you can be, what you can do to be enthused about just going out to the park, right? And sometimes, you know, for me, that's okay. I want to go ditch. I want to fight a bunch of people, but you know, you got to make sure that you're enthused about other things as well. So like running battle games, right? Arts and sciences. I think it's once you have that culture, a really good culture. If you just kind of plumb the depths of what's going on there and kind of get out of your comfort zone, you know, maybe open yourself up to something cool that somebody else does on a pretty consistent basis. It's just easy, you know. It's really easy to get excited about going to Amtgard. And I think when you're the leader of your park, the park will reflect your own enthusiasm. So if you're enthused, they're going to be enthused. You know, and sometimes you got to fake it to make it. You know, sometimes we don't want to go to the park every day on Saturday, right? You want to start noon drinking or morning drinking or whatever, right? But it's something that actually Randall told me. Randall was my knight. That your park will reflect however you show up, right? If there's 10 people there and you're normally a park of like 40 people, if you're excited to be there, they're going to keep coming back because they're going to be excited. So that will go back up hopefully at 40. It's a very rambling answer.
So one of the big things I'm trying to, so you can almost self-fulfilling destiny. Our park's dying. If you dwell on how you're dying,
yeah,
instead of how you're thriving.
Right. If you're going to sit around and dwell on the negative issues, shit, you know. Just for an example, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, we actually have these things called seasons. And like it gets really cold there, and there's this water that falls from the sky, and it turns into snow. So it's really hard in the winter to be very enthused about going out and getting hit in the face, and that hurts, right? Especially in the cold. But that enthusiasm, if you dwell on that, and your park is going to reflect that, they're going to say, well, this guy's not having fun, he's in charge, you know. So I kind of don't want to come out here with people that are having a bad time. But if you come up, you know, and you're, yeah, all right, let's do it. Let's have a snowball fight in the middle of the day. Like, take advantage of the worst situation, make the best of it. People will follow. People want to have fun. You know, I mean, the best way you can do that, the best way you can sell that to them is by having fun yourself, or at least pretend you're having fun.
Okay.
One of the things you do have to learn to deal with is Amtgard is fun, but it's also a really competitive game. Tempers can flare up, and so it's going to happen at any park. Tempers will flare up, and there'll be like an altercation. But if it's like, suppose it's like the same guy or a couple of people getting into an altercation every week, and here's the key point, nothing is done about it, and I'm not just saying just ban them. No communication is done, no mediation is done. You're not saying, hey, this can't be happening every week. People are going to start being uncomfortable at your park, and they're going to start leaving your park. So you have to make an effort, not just as an officer, but as a person, as a mediator, as a leader, to prevent that stuff from happening. Kind of be in the middle. A lot of new parks get into a situation, I've noticed, especially parks that are mostly young people, where factions build up, and what happens is like there's two factions that both hate each other, they're both competing, they're both vying for offices to try to deal with the other faction, and both factions believe that if the other faction would simply leave, the park would be allowed to grow and thrive and be better. And what eventually happens, and I've seen this before, is if one faction finally drives out the other faction, the park dies. It ends up being 5 of their friends just ditching in like t-shirts and jeans or something like that for years until that eventually dwindles down. So you have to keep in mind to deal with that. Having your park look good, it's kind of like a really weird thing with, say, garb. You don't want to force good garb on people, but you also don't want to put up with people showing up with t-shirts and jeans. And that's a really hard balance to maintain. It's really hard to just only encourage good garb, and through that get good garb and get your park looking good. If your park looks good, more people are encouraged to stay and more people are encouraged to join. So that's what I got.
Randall, they sort of solved all the world's ills as far as Amtgard. Do you have anything else?
No, I could go now. I'd like to actually return at some point to the point that Isaac made about expressing enthusiasm to the infectious, like do that later. But for now, I think that something that has worked in a lot of parks is to build a ritual into the attendance. There are many parks in Amtgard that have Amtgard, where after the park is over, they all go out to eat somewhere. And we did that at our park for a while, and we were going to some doldrums about 10 years ago in our attendance. It was down in like the mid-20s-ish. And we just all went out to a place called the Chinese Phoenix nearby and had some food. And then we went home and gamed together. And everybody in the park was doing this. So even if you weren't as excited about Amtgard, you were still excited about that participation and you would go. What we're doing now at my park is we have a group of us that every weekend we go to Taco Bell immediately. As soon as we get to the park, we just get together and go to Taco Bell. And I don't think most of us really like Taco Bell a whole lot, but there are weeks where I'm thinking that, maybe I could stay home and play video games today, but I really want to go to Taco Bell with the guys. And then I go to Amtgard. So just find some kind of ritual that gets people into it, that builds the community of Amtgard so they're not isolated from participation.
Do you want to readdress the other issue now?
We can talk about that a little bit. I stole the idea. It wasn't my idea. I got the idea from a movie, Excalibur, where Arthur is sick and dying, and then the land is sick and dying. And I know it's mystical mumbo jumbo, but I really think it works. I think people take cues from their leaders at their parks. And if the leader is just like hanging out in a chair all the time and they're not participating, the rest of the park is, first of all, going to forget that they're there, and that's really awful. But they'll take cues from that. They'll be like, well, that's our monarch. That's great. But if the monarch is excited, is enthusiastic, people take cues from that as well, and those are positive cues. So if you want your park to be excited, get up, get out of your chair, be excited too. Go do the things you want people to do and they will follow you.
Can I build off of that point? Just from my own personal experience, I would say the 2 times I was king of Dragon Spine, organizational and management skills really weren't my strong point at that juncture. But we experienced these really big attendance spikes, and I think that's because, what I did have is I had a lot of get up and go, and god dang, I want to play Amtgard today. This is going to be sweet. It's Saturday, I look forward to this all week. And so, to kind of emphasize that point, you also don't have to be the best leader in the world. Like, we're all developing, right? But if you have that enthusiasm, if you're just excited to play the game, that is incredibly contagious, incredibly crucial. So just to give you an example of what that can do, where you're lacking in certain other areas.
Yeah, on the other side of it, bitterness. Like, it's really hard to play this game for many, many years and not like develop some sort of bitterness or some sort of grudges. And I'm not gonna lie, that stuff kills parks. You really want to avoid that. You really want to, I don't know how you can deal with people who have that aren't you, but talk with them, mediate with them, tell them that even if they have to put on a pretty face, you know, a pretty mask of enthusiasm, that is a lot better than holding a grudge or being bitter all the time.
So one of the points that was brought up was talking about, Kaads, I think you mentioned it, excuse me, was when you got sort of the different factions. So I want to get back to that, but almost in that same mindset. As a park matures and they start going through some of the stumbling blocks and whatnot, and you can call it what you want to, but let's talk about on the field. How do you address skill gaps specifically? You know, all of a sudden, when you're a couple of years in, now you've got those people that have really started to focus on fighting, and then you've got folks who either are a little bit indifferent, or you've got that new blood that's eager, but oh my God, you know, success is out of reach because he gets annihilated. What do we do?
I'll jump in on that. So my park right now is myself, the two leaders, myself and Shion, which we're warlords of an international quality, and then we have 3 newbies. Oh my God, like, it's really hard because they come out and they're so excited and they make some badass acts that's completely unusable. You know, like, okay, cool, and we'll fight them and we'll have this big battle where we roll around and like jump on trees. And they're like, yeah, I'm a badass. And then they'll see me and Eric fight and they'll be like, oh, okay. No excitement back. One of the things you can do, and I'll tell anybody this, you can get your fighter practice during the week. Eric and I started moving our fighter practice, and we do an hour about 3 times a week outside of the park because it was starting to have a real detriment, you know. And then what we did is we started making big badass axes. You can listen to your park, and your park will tell you through what they make. And we live up in the mountains, so it's very barbarian-ish, right? So if like they want to wear a lot of furs and make big axes, I want to do that too. So it's not going down to their level, but meeting them at a level where you both can flirt out and have a good time is really important. Just because you're really good at something does not nullify something they want to do, right? And if they want to come make that extra effort, like come to a fighter practice or something, just using fighting as an example, I'm sure it's the same in sciences, you know, then you invite them, you welcome them into that, but if they don't want to, there's nothing wrong.
One week at my park, we had an influx of like 15 newbies. And what we did was we started a juggling game, a series of juggling games, where we had like 4 newbies and 1 veteran form a team. And the veteran would encourage the newbies and start and plan out stuff with the newbies. And Vegas got really into it, and we retained those guys so much from things like that. You can also do things like run like a 2-man team game where a newbie is partnered up with a veteran, and that veteran like mentors them and tries to talk them into like what to do to fight. And even if you're not really successful, that newbie starts to pick up on like how the veteran thinks and everything like that. Another thing is that like you can do this outside of a battle game where you talk to a newbie and be like, hey, so what's your background? Oh, you like to play D&D? Oh, you really like the super complicated multi-class classes, you know? You'll really love caster in our game. Like, and talk to this guy who knows about caster, or talk to me who knows about caster. Stuff like that. You pay attention to your newbies. Pay attention to what they want, and communicate with them. Don't just ignore them because they're new and they're not your friends.
No, skill gap is a huge problem. These two have addressed it really well. I've got some articles online you should read about skill gap, and if you haven't seen it yet, watch the video of the panel that did battle games earlier. They had a lot of good information on how you can do battle games that appeal to people of multiple skill levels and make them have a good time.
So, all right, let me get back to another question in a moment. So what do you do when your core veterans are like they're happy with the way it is?
We should let Ben go first.
What do you do when your core veterans are happy with the way things are? It sounds like the question is asking if you know, things could be a lot better. The people who are running things are just a little bit burned out. I think that if you're one of those people, one of those core veterans, you should be aware that that is a potential problem, and you should tap into those excited newbies and try to realize their dreams too. Try to find out what it is that makes them excited about Amtgard and bring it to the table. And if you're not one of those people, if you're one of the newbies and you're seeing the folks that are running through the park and they're going through the motions, you've got some options on that. And we discussed that in previous panels too, in terms of how you can just do your own thing or how you can get into office yourself. But you can also engage them. One of the biggest things that's helped me in Amtgard stay excited is to have people by my side that are excited for me when I'm running out of steam. They're the ones that are saying, this is a lot of fun, what are we doing next week? Or hey, that was a great battle game we did, what about this Saturday? And that is magnificently helpful. If you're someone who thinks you might be in that situation of getting burned out, find someone to help you do that. And if you are someone who really wants to urge those people on, the folks that are running your organization on, ask them those questions, express your enthusiasm. I think it helps.
And just to build up something that Ben does when he's the king, like in Dragon's Prime, you don't have other kings. Ben just takes a break for a while. But one thing that you do that I think is pertinent to that question is you'll find new people. You'll ask them to go into office. People that maybe you wouldn't necessarily go play D&D with, or you might not go to a bar with, but taking those people aside and being like, hey, do you want to be my regent? I really want to kind of build up somebody with regent stuff, and that seems to be pretty successful for you as well, right? And people outside that content circle, you would say.
It does. It means you can have someone else doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Because you might have people that aren't ideas people yet. They're still learning to be ideas people, but they're willing to put in the sweat to make it happen, and they're willing to make some ideas happen. And they turn into ideas people over the course of the reign. I just had a regent who is a hard worker, and I didn't know if he was a smart worker, but I knew he was a hard worker. But he came up with a lot of ideas. And about 2/3 of them we had to dial back a little bit, but the 1/3 that we let go on further, those made things better because he was there. So I think identify those people that you can develop as officers too. You're absolutely right.
And you'd be surprised how many problems can be solved by simple communication. Talking to those old timers who are like, all I want to do is ditch, or something like that, and being like, look, if we don't have battle games, this park's going to die. Like a lot of veterans, like when you're straight with it. If you're a park that only ditches and has like maybe one battle game, then talk to them and say like, hey, I know you're happy with how things are, but that's not how we retain newbies. That's not how we get newbies into the game.
Can I elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, please. I think that was the next question.
In 2007, our Crown Lands Park in Dragonspine was doing okay. It's always been doing okay. And okay for us is about 30 members. But we had just gone through a pretty big decline. And we had noticed that our officers were in a cycle where we'd have somebody who would be in office and they would just do a terrible job. And then the next officer would be a really good officer, but they had to spend all their energy fixing things. And they'd be burned up at the end, and then nobody would be ready to take their place, and we'd have another bad officer flushing it again. So we decided to fix that. We sat down with everyone in our park and did exactly what Kaads described. But instead of a one-on-one situation of hey, why don't we all be on the same side, we all did it as a group. So there were about 25 of us in a room, and we all talked about the things we wanted in Amtgard, and listened to the things that other people wanted in Amtgard, and made that realization happen of, you know what, hey, I want to ditch all the time. But ditching is fun when there's 20 of us, not when there's 3. I'd like it if those people would ditch. They want to do more battle games. Maybe we can get some chocolate in our peanut butter here and make this fun for all of us. And having that environment, that kind of conversation where we were all expressing what we wanted and listening to what other people wanted, made it non-confrontational, and it made people start thinking, what can I do to make this game better? What can I do to give people what they want so we all get what we want and we move forward on an exciting kind of way? And invigorated our park. We ended up having probably 6 straight years of 45 to 50 people at our park, and officers just hitting things out of the park over and over again before we started to get off that high. It was an amazing thing that happened, and I encourage very frank conversations like that. They clear the air and they get ideas out there, and they invite people to think about what other people want at Amtgard.
So I think that can be very intimidating whenever, we'll go back to factions, and I don't know a better way to say it say it's a 2-company land. Right, it's company A, company B, and there's a couple guys in the middle and gals in the middle that aren't necessarily with them. Maybe they're a 3rd company from another land, whatever, but a very company-centric community. What is that 3rd person? How do they get those conversations going?
You might have 4 more companies up where you are.
Obviously any faction, but it's great whenever it's like, well, of course you guys are experienced communicators, experienced leaders, and you would be on the panel, but what about the sub? It's not that person.
A key thing to remember is that there is, and on his Ask Me Anything that I really liked is that you can be very honest with somebody, but that doesn't mean you're attacking them. That doesn't mean you're the aggressor. That you can talk with them, explain how you think and feel, what the problems are, and include them in on the solution, on what you feel there needs to be a solution. Don't just have a conversation, not a lecture. Encourage both groups to have a conversation and not lecture each other. It can be difficult, but it needs to happen for a lot of those groups.
I mean, yeah, these guys kind of covered it all, but I'll just say that in Amtgard, especially if that third person coming in is somebody that's new, you know, somebody that's not really familiar, or somebody maybe that's been in 5 years, but he or she's at work with people that have been doing 10 years, so there's a little bit of that like intimidation effect here. At the end of the day, we're all people in pajamas hitting each other with baseball bats. You know what I mean? And that's what we're here to do. And it's really not hard to think up fun things to enhance that experience. And I feel like just kind of taking the assumption immediately that everybody's opinion at your park is valid is a great way to include that third person, you know, other faction, you know. So making an effort to hear what they say, to hear what they think, to build that community, you know. You may already have a community at your park that you're very happy with, kind of going into your question about what do you do with content players. And that community may be awesome, that culture may be awesome. But just because somebody's new doesn't mean they can't add to it. You know, and if, you know, like Kaads was saying, if there's a problem person that hasn't been addressed, that's one thing. But that's kind of rare, you know. So making an effort to include people. One example is there's a fighter that I know of in kind of the area that I'm from. And I realized that he was kind of thick, you know, not fighting so well, kind of like angry, a little angry that whenever he fought, you know, and it was getting frustrating. It was like having an effect on me. And then I kind of realized, you know, what do we do when we go out there? It's me and it's Shion and these guys in the company, and we kind of go out and we fight a whole bunch, and some guy comes, and we would kind of rather fight each other, you know, because he's not that good. So we just smoke him and like, yeah, and go fight each other again. Like, definitely I want to fight my bros, but I realized like, what's my language telling that guy, you know? So did this experiment where I went out and immediately, hey man, how you doing? It's really good to see you. I'm really glad you're here. Compliment him on his shots. Not only did his fighting get better, welcome dude, but he became a really fun person to have on the field. He's not necessarily a person that I would go hang out with, right? But he became really enjoyable on the field. He started asking questions, started to feel better, right? Started to feel included, you know? So just me putting the I don't know, looking at how I was treating people unintentionally, it definitely didn't mean to snub him, but assessing that opened me up, and now we have a guy that's pretty fun to fight.
Can I actually kind of act as a member of an audience and ask a question for us to address?
To the panel?
Yes, to all of us. So how do we deal with, say, small park, a bunch of guys from school, young, you know, and all of a sudden an attractive girl shows up and they are not used to dealing with them. How do we make that
Oh, that's a death sentence. Wow, let's get another park.
How do we make that a comfortable environment? Because a comfortable environment makes for a good park.
Right. Are you incorporate her, or what do you?
Exactly. How do we solve that?
We made her a tunic, is what we did first thing. We made her a tunic and we gave her a flail. This is Eric's girlfriend. And we said, here you go. And then somebody else brought their girlfriend out and we gave her a bow. We made her a tunic. We said, you're going to stand there and you're going to shoot everybody. And they started just coming out. Because there's kind of that weird, like, boys club mentality thing that goes on in Amtgard. It's kind of bullshit. But anybody with a bow is still somebody with a bow or somebody with a flail. So
yes,
just make an effort to incorporate, I would say.
There's another side here. I think I heard a slightly different question.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So much, can you address that? Is that, I mean, to me, it seems like another communication opportunity. Hey
Yeah.
guys, you made her uncomfortable. You didn't know you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see what you're
You,
saying.
you see what I mean? But,
Yeah.
so she felt welcome, but, I mean, sometimes we're not always the best at communicating our intents either, right?
Mhm.
Is that what you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the best thing to do, if you see like a bunch of guys obviously making a girl uncomfortable, and they see, and it seems to be fun for them, and she's just kind of going like, yeah. Talk to them. Say like, hey, that kind of stuff is not conducive to us making a comfortable environment at our park. It's going to.
I mean, I know, right?
She's
I mean,
not-
sometimes they just don't have the social skills to know, especially in some of our younger parks.
Yeah, I think what Danny said is having a conversation with somebody might not always be the most comfortable thing in the world, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
And that goes for guys too, you know, like anybody that's being made uncomfortable playing by other people, they need to be talked to like adults.
Mhm.
So this actually is a great transition to the card I've been holding on to. Okay, maybe my leadership is just stubborn and I'll get out. What other opportunities are there? I mean, I'm not going to move so I can play a different part.
Mhm.
Are there any? Kind of,
Lots of opportunities, I think. And I think that it's easier for people to fall into a trap because when they first come to Amtgard, in most parks, the people that they see running things are the folks that are in office. I think that if those people are running your park kind of poorly or into the ground or just kind of barely keeping it afloat, you can't seem to get through to them, you can't seem to get elected, you still have some options to make things happen. People learn incorrectly that they have to be in office to do that. They don't. If you want to run a feast, you run a feast. So we had a rain where I was thinking, that feast was okay. Let's do our own. And we threw in our own feast. And we just did it just like a midrun would have been done. And it was a lot of fun. And we were in office to do it. Or if we're looking at a battle game saying, hey, I'd like to run a battle game too, you can do that as well. You can do it at the end of the day if people don't, you do it during the day, but you can always do things of your own to make things happen. And that not only gets you what you wanted, it gets your battle games, it gets your feast, it gets your fun going on, but you begin to earn the trust of the people around you. That they see that you're someone who's excited and trustworthy and capable, and that's a trifecta of traits that make you a leader. So you can reinvigorate your park just by doing the things that you are hoping other people will start doing.
Yeah, a big part is be the change you want to see. Just to reiterate what Randall said, you do not need to be in office to run a battle game. You don't need to be in office to run a feast. You can run your own event, and you don't need to be in office for it. Yeah, running an event takes money and takes reserving a site, but you can talk to other friends. If other friends are like disgruntled with what's happening right now, focus on the positive. Be the change you want to see.
It's inspiring. Other people pick up on it too. They realize suddenly, because they might not have, they suddenly see Kaads like running his own workshop at the park and think, well, he's not the regent. I want to do a workshop. I can do a workshop. And they just didn't realize it before, and then suddenly they do. So you can cascade your efforts out.
I will tell you, I'm going to throw these out there, and I think it's going to be a continual trend through this one is communicate. So we're going to lightning through these real quick. But then I really want to talk about how to maintain momentum. Because I know we've talked about some, hey, what about this when it's bad, it's bad. Got it. But, so we're going to get there, but I just want to power through these real quick. Let's say that one. What about toxic players? Not so much of leadership, but it's just that one dude that will not go away. Hasn't done anything significantly bad enough to be banned, but no matter what, Randall keeps showing up. So what, thoughts?
Well, I mean, I hate to keep throwing it back to Vinny's comment, but you gotta be an adult about some things, and as much as I'd like to believe that we're a place for everybody, I believe that's possible, but some people come with their own baggage of emotional or behavioral or whatever is going on. And they use this game as a way to take that out on people in inappropriate ways. Social interaction or fighting. Through social interaction or fighting. And that's just not okay, frankly. And if you do not do something about it, you don't have to be like, you're banished from the land, You need to offer them an opportunity. You need to build with them. You need to critically assess what they're doing. And like you said, have a conversation, right? Not an argument, a conversation where there's give and take and compromise and negotiation. But at some point, if that player is going to continue to be toxic after multiple interventions, they are making that choice. And then you have to think, okay, I've given this person a lot of chances. I've done everything I can do. It's time for them to go. And that sucks. It really, really sucks. But is one person worth 50? Is one person worth 30? You know?
You really do have to make that choice. It is really hard for a lot of people to make. I mean, most of Amtgard, to be honest, is a bunch of social outcasts, people who were outcast when they were in high school or whatever. So they finally get together and they finally see this group of people who they really get along with, who they really meld with. And the very idea of kicking someone out of that group is unthinkable to them, but it really does have to be done. Because if you do not do that, then we are not hurting for numbers enough to let people like that play. Another thing to elaborate on is, why is that person toxic? And there's been multiple people throughout the years who come to an event, they do something completely mean, asinine, whatever, and why did they do it? Because on the way home, them and their friends are bragging about it, and they're celebrating that effort. They think it's cool. And so that's why communication needs to happen. They need to know the consequences of what they did, no matter how cool they think it is.
No, they covered it really well. That's good answers.
So let's talk a little bit about maintaining, and I apologize, but I'm going to hijack somebody's question here. But you mentioned before, and you made a joke, but as far as you guys both did about Dragon's Spawn a little bit about how there's a productive monarch, less productive, then there's a cleanup squad, and then they're smoked. So with such, I mean, that's a huge spectrum, right, for people to get slammed against. How do you recuperate from that, and then to where you've got a good, steady maintenance? Let's talk about maintenance.
It's tough depending on your park. And I'm talking about this from a park level because we're mostly focusing on the one park with Dragon's Spawn's Crown Lands, which is between 30 and 45 people depending on the week. And we built a consensus in our park. We built a consensus culture out of that conversation that I described earlier. And for the very few people that are on the fringe of that consensus, it can be alienating, and we try to work on that to bring them in as well. But we're talking about who might be the next monarch 3 months, 6 months in advance of each reign, and we try to clear up any kind of disconnect that might be before it even happens. And that's not to exclude people. If people are interested, we say, okay, how can we make this happen? But it's to have that conversation well in advance of elections, well in advance of crown falls. We're planning reigns as opposed to stumbling into them. And we rarely do stumble into a reign, but I'd say that 95% of our reigns these days are thought of in advance, and the worst case scenario is they're just mediocre, and in most cases they're pretty decent. I'd say that having those conversations at your park and talking to your officers and getting everybody who's interested in running things involved in those conversations, because you want people to be inside your consensus, not outside it, helps, because then you have that continuity.
A big thing that can help, say in order to solve one of these problems with officers and stuff, we do what Randall says, and I start a battle game and stuff like that, and I get people to help do it. And suppose we have a good camaraderie starting it. Do you know what we do? We start a household. We give ourselves a name, we give ourselves a symbol. And what we do is we dedicate ourselves to running good battle games. And it doesn't matter who's in office then. Now we have a group of people who is dedicated to running good games, and that's going to help hold the park together, even on the local level, on the kingdom level, whatever. If that group sees that battle games are going down at their park level, they're going to work to change that. And it doesn't have to be a battle game household. It could be a household dedicated to ANS, Feast, something like that. Starting a household with a symbol and a name can be a huge step to improving the quality of everything on the local and kingdom level.
So you guys talked a little bit about, we've addressed women and stuff. So let's talk diversity for a minute, because we need your blood, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk battlefield women. There is a constant discussion about women feeling belittled out on the battlefield, either because they're not as successful as men on the battlefield, or whatever direction you want to go, you can feel it. So how do you handle female fighters who consistently feel like they're being belittled on the field?
You were the
This is a pretty big topic for me, and there's a couple of things that I've been working on to make this happen. The first is I've got some videos online where I got a bunch of spectacular women Amtgarders to say some very good things about it, to share their experiences, and I recommend you take a look at those. I try to look at the park from the perspective of what if I were a woman? What would this park look like to me? And obviously I can never get fully into that mindset, but I try to, because otherwise you get trapped in your own assumptions. But when it comes to female fighters, to women that are fighting at your park, they often find that they get treated differently than the men that are at the park, and they just want to go out and play Amtgard, like anybody else. They don't want to get treated special because they're women, they don't want to get treated worse because they're women, they just want to get treated like an Amtgarder. And we unconsciously do things that we don't realize are discriminatory and turn people away, like cheering them on when they're not particularly good and they're fighting somebody. A lot of women don't like that in Amtgard. They find it to be demeaning and belittling. Treat them just like you would one of your guys. Don't treat them like they're special and they need extra cheering because they're girls. They're adults, and they're sovereign adults, and they're quite capable, just like the rest of us, and we should treat them that way. I think that helps a lot. So don't get trapped in your assumptions, and treat people the way you want to be treated.
Don't get trapped in your assumptions. I think that's the key. I don't think I could say that any better.
Stop and look around and say, hey, are all of our officers dudes? When did that happen? Is that good? Hey, how come all the women are sitting down over there and all the dudes are over there fighting? Is something going on? Actually think about the things that you're seeing at your park and ask questions about, did we just pull up 20 dudes in front of court and give them awards and not a single woman? Why? Are we overlooking something? Think about these things. And it may be that there's a good reason for it, but if there's not, you gotta fix it.
So as the park ages, so do obviously its members, and they get distracted by other things. They may not have the same amount of time that they once did to give it all their all. What are some ways that someone whose attendance is sporadic that they can still actively support a local park?
We just had a fella come, he's my regent right now. He's 5-year hiatus, something like that. And he came in, he was very enthusiastic, and I just asked him point blank, you know, what do you want to do? What do you want? What do you see? You know, a veteran will have a lot of experience, a lot of insight about maybe there was something back in their day that they did that would have been a really good idea. So, you know, validating that, incorporating, what would you like to see? What was really cool? You know, sometimes that means you have to sit there and listen to really boring stories. But, you know, you can pull things from that. And I think mostly people just want to feel like they're a part of something. So if you make that extra effort to bring that person back in, then there's a greater chance that they'll stick. If you don't, you're just like, oh, hey, it's that cool guy that shows up every once in a while, fight him, and then he's going to leave, and like, we'll see him in the next blue moon. That is a guy that could have been a core member of your park again. That could have helped you out. That could have been a leader. That could have been a good fighter. That could have been a good ANS person. So going out of your comfort zone, right, and making that person feel welcome is really important. And if they do want to come out every blue moon, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But don't miss that opportunity, I guess is what I'm saying.
A big one is communicate outside of the park. I've seen several parks that kind of either turn sporadic for a while or start to die because 90% of the people, the park day happens, they want to show up, they want to play Amtgard, but they think no one else is going to show up. And if all of those people who thought that no one else is going to show up, you'd have 40 people and you'd play Amtgard. So communicate. If you're an officer, or even if you're not an officer, if you're planning on running games, like, hey, I'm planning on running this game on your Facebook group or whatever group that you like to use. That'll get the people out there. Communicate online. Or call people. If you call your friends and say, hey, let's show up for the park. Yeah, I know that there's probably not going to be a lot of people out. Let's show up. We might be surprised. And there's been times like that where we were surprised. We got 40 people and we expected like 10. So,
yeah, to build off of what he said, use event pages on Facebook. Like for some reason, if you use an event page, it makes it seem more exciting. Oh yeah, let's do this. You know, like your mid-range or what was it? 96 people came on the event page. So it starts to turn into this like mini event, you know? Put that name on it.
Just because it has an event page, yeah.
Yeah, just because it has an event page. Right? So it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be really fun. As opposed to like, oh, all right, I've thrown this out on the mailing list and please come, you know.
Share a little bit about Tripark stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
Real quickly, because
Yeah.
we've only got a couple moments left.
Yeah, so this is something that I'm doing right now, where we have 3 parks in northern New Mexico that the farthest are about an hour from each other, Santa Fe, and then Rio Rancho and Albuquerque, and they're 20 minutes from each other, something like that. And so, just kind of looking around and like, why aren't we all playing Amtgard on the same day? Like, Albuquerque's doing fairly well, Rio Rancho's doing fairly well, Wormspire is Wormspire, you know, we're a little shyer, but we all have heart. Why aren't we playing Amtgard? We could be having like 60 people days, you know? Made a damn event page. And we're on our 5th one, and we're up to like, where are we at? We on like 55 people now?
53 was the
Yeah, 53 was the last one. This is the 5th one. We're only getting better. And so if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, they're rotating between parks. Like each month they do a different park, and everyone just gathers there.
Right.
It looks amazing.
Yeah. And it's not, we're not doing anything really that special. We're just playing Amtgard, right? But because we kind of have this aura around it, if it's an event, it's this thing, we gave it a name, we gave it a picture, right? Kind of like your household thing, we made an event page for it, which means it's official. Like, we've been having these great Amtgard days, you know?
Did you want to?
No, I'm good. Those are really
Okay.
good.
This one's super quick, but I want to address it. So real quickly, I need one pro, one con. Let's talk about households and companies, risks and strengths. Kaads.
Pro is that households and companies, they create core members. If you're part of a company and you're part of a group or a faction or whatever, chances are you're going to stay. The con is people outside of that company has less of a reason to stay. I've seen it so a big company takes over a park, and that company kind of uses that park as a recruiting mechanism and becomes big. And sooner or later, that park is only that company. And that company might be big, it might be 20 or 30 members, but it stifles the growth of the park.
Yeah, like Kaads said, you can create a core group of people, and you can, just by being a really good company, also create really good leaders, really good artisans, really good fighters. A con then is that people start to assume you have to be in the company to be a leader. And if you're in that company, that means maybe stepping back sometimes, letting somebody else try. Doesn't mean they're necessarily going to succeed, but at least that way a shadow government doesn't develop or the facade of one.
Sure.
You know?
You did have one?
Companies are really good. There's some challenges to them. You have to be aware, if you are a company, you're bringing a lot of good things to Amtgard, but also be aware of the ways that you may be inadvertently alienating other people. I have a story. When I talked about our crown lands, how we had this really good trajectory of our growth of our park, one of the things that stalled that was actually my fault. Where I was looking around saying, hey, we're all doing really well, everyone's in really good moods now, the companies seem to be doing very well. What if we have company challenge games at our park? Bam, it just blew up in our faces. It was really bad. People took it really seriously. I assumed there was a maturity level that would make that not happen. That was incorrect. And people look at companies, they get alienated by them. I'm the only person by design in my company, in my park, and people still look at it as an alienating thing sometimes. So you have to be cautious about that, you have to be aware about it, and if you want your park to be successful, find ways to resolve that. Bring other people in, not to your company, but into your park's consensus.
Okay, we have to wrap up. This can actually be the first one where we address all the questions, so we're going to go for it. Recruitment strategies. First off, does it differ from starting a new park to trying to maintain a park? And do you seem to have a favorite or most productive for you?
I think it's the same thing. I think you're always building your new park over and over and over again. And you just keep on doing it. I don't have a favorite recruitment strategy because recruitment has just been difficult in the last career since we've kind of saturated our town and we're trying to look for new ways. So if you have some good ideas, please let me know.
One of the things that we're doing in Wormspire, which it needs to be worked on a little bit, is we're looking around at like what demographic we're not hitting. And so there are these kids that come out from like a Hispanic background or a Mexican background, and they come out and they're just sitting there while their parents play soccer on the field, you know, on a Sunday. And it's just kind of like a, oh, duh, sort of a thing. We should be putting swords in those kids' hands. You know? And it's not necessarily a consistent thing, but we've had a couple come back, and some of them don't speak English, right? And that's definitely a challenge. But whacking people has its own language, right? So my advice to summarize is just look around and be very critical about what demographics might be out there that you just don't naturally assume are there, you know, or aren't very conscientious.
Be aware of gaming groups that are in your area, gaming shops, colleges, and actually, but being aware of those and actually going over there and putting up flyers. Like, I've had parks that talk about it for years and no one actually goes and does it. So you have to go and do it to make it happen. You have to design a flyer, you have to go and do it. I've heard meetup.com is a very good resource for recruiting. I've heard very wonderful stories about that, about how they turned a 10-person park into a 50-person park. I've never experienced it myself, but I've heard it's good.
Well, again, thank you guys. A couple of you are repeat offenders. There's been some time this day. I can't say enough on behalf of the entire audience online and here in the room how much we appreciate you giving us some of your time. So thank you. Round of applause, please.